Hello, I'm Lene Meligard, the Director of Marketing for Volusion. Thank you all for joining our webinar today on fraud and chargeback prevention. Today's session will be recorded and you'll receive an email tomorrow with the link to the recording and the corresponding slides. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them and we'll include a list of answers in our follow-up email tomorrow. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters. David Hudak is our Senior Risk Analyst and Josh Wilder is our Payment Processing Specialist. David, please take it away.
Thanks, Lene. Hi, I'm David Hudak. I'm the Senior Risk Analyst here at Volusion. I will be your host for this webinar, at least for the first half anyway. So why is it important to mitigate fraud? Well, it might seem like a bit of a silly question, but there are still many merchants today who are unaware of the growing prevalence and scale of fraud in the online business world. The estimated losses for e-commerce businesses grew by over 14% between 2020 and 2021. For just e-commerce alone, fraud losses were estimated to reach around $20 billion globally. Now, it's no secret there's been a huge shift away from retail towards online that grew from COVID-19. And with that came a redirected focus from fraudsters. And the simple fact of it is fraud costs you as a merchant money. Chargebacks against your business resulting from fraudulent orders are very difficult to successfully dispute. So you'd be liable to cover the cost of refunding the fraudulent transaction, as well as any regulatory fees that occur when you receive a chargeback. In addition, if the number of chargebacks you receive are severe enough, it can affect your eligibility entirely for merchant services and your ability to accept credit card payments through your store. The purpose of this webinar is to provide useful insights surrounding fraud prevention and explain some of the tools available to you. A little later on, Josh will go over chargebacks, what they are, how you can prevent and dispute them, and present an overview of the services provided by Volusion Payments. Getting started, reviewing orders. One of the first pieces of information you are going to want to review is the AVS response code. AVS, short for Address Verification Service, is a fraud prevention tool offered by most major credit card brands, and for the most part is a requirement to accept and process payments with their credit cards. It gives you an indication of whether or not the billing address provided on the order is accurately reflected on their credit card statement. If the response code is N, that would mean that neither the street address or zip code is a match and authorization is automatically denied. This alone is responsible for stopping many fraud attempts before they become an issue. However, you're going to want to pay attention to certain mismatch errors. There are some response codes that indicate that there's only a partial match against either the zip code or street address, and there are other response codes that indicate that the order is ineligible for the AVS, as the card is a non-US domestic card brand, or the billing address itself is outside of the US. You're able to customize settings with your gateway to filter out orders by the response code type and determine which response codes you allow authorization through your store, but you're going to want to be mindful. AVS response codes are always requested by banks and credit card issuers when a chargeback is initiated for fraud. If you accept an order that is claimed to be fraudulent with a non-matching response code type, it puts you in a very poor position to refute their claim. IP address. An IP address is critical information to review when vetting an order. An IP address can be considered a unique identifier for the device placing an order online, which marks the location of its local network. If you review an IP address that's located far away from the listed shipping address, that can be seen as a bit of a red flag. In addition, in a review of the IP address, you may be able to detect the use of a VPN or proxy. These are tools used to mask the local network location of the device placing an order through your store to another location. There are many legitimate reasons this could be enabled on a device, and it is commonly seen when you see a customer buying online from a work computer while accessing a corporate VPN. But VPNs are also frequently used by fraudsters, so they should be carefully noted. What are some common red flags associated with fraudulent activity? One big one is billing and shipping disparities. If a shipping address significantly differs from a billing address by a magnitude of hundreds of miles or more, that should ring an alarm bell. There are, of course, legitimate cases where a billing and shipping address may differ, but you're going to have to use your best judgment. As always, when there is some uncertainty, it's never a bad idea to reach out to your customer for more information. In addition, IP addresses reported on any sites under a blacklist should be cause for concern, as well as VPNs or proxy devices not sourced in the US. Suspicious email addresses are primarily going to refer to unregistered or non-existent email domains. A good rule of thumb is if the email appears illegitimate, it's a decent side the order is too. And finally, and this is a pretty big one, freight or mail forwarding shipping locations. Now, a freight forwarder refers to an organization that assists with redirecting parcels domestically and abroad. This is very often employed by fraudsters operating outside the U.S. to receive their stolen goods from businesses who only ship to the U.S. There are some niche cases where this type of shipping address can be part of a legitimate order, typically in a business-to-business sale capacity, but generally this should be cause for immediate suspicious, if not outright cancellation. Card testing and fraud score. So what is card testing? Card testing refers to fraudulent spam orders placed by web bots in order to test stolen or randomly generated card data. Card testing is a form of e-commerce fraud best described as quantity over quality. The orders in these card testing batches will often appear nonsensical, and you may get the impression that this fraudster really isn't trying. In reality, what they're trying to do is test hundreds, if not thousands, of different card numbers in the hope that they'll be able to identify a valid in-use card number. The dangers of card testing are numerous. Now, for one, there is a risk of potentially hefty authorization fees if there's no stopgap measure in place to mitigate the number of test orders that are attempted to be run through your site. And also, there is the danger of your site falling risk to a denial of service attack if it continues to be flooded with these spam orders, which would also disrupt traffic from legitimate customers. Now, there is a setting enabled through Volusion stores which set a maximum number of order attempts from a single IP address per day. This greatly reduces the number of test orders that appear through your store, but it does not prevent them entirely. In order to do that, you're going to want to utilize a bot detection software. We recommend reCAPTCHA. This is one of the more effective free tools available to deter testing and spam orders. reCAPTCHA does require free registration with Google, but it is then very easy to integrate with your store after being provided with an API key from Google. It is one of the most widely used tools available for most sites to prevent bot attacks. It's very customizable. It's very easy to adjust the size, visibility, and complexity of these CAPTCHA images and where to enable them on your site. We typically recommend at checkout, but it is at your discretion. Fraud score. Fraud score is Volusion's own fraud tool that provides key insights and does a bit of the investigative legwork for you. This gives you a snapshot look at the relative fraudiness, so to speak, of an order, evaluated upon a few key risk metrics, some of which are aligned with some of what we've gone over previously in this webinar. If you want a detailed breakdown of what fraud score is looking at when it evaluates the score, you can click on View Details underneath the fraud score presented. Fraud score will also provide you with an IP address and device tracking to help identify repeat offenders. Often enough, when someone is able to successfully place a fraudulent order through your store, they are very likely to attempt to do so again in the future. And this gives you the means to easily detect them when their head pops up again. There is a free trial available for fraud score that's applicable to a limited batch of orders. And there is also a variable monthly subscription plan depending on the number of orders you receive month to month. And with that, I'm going to take it away over to Josh, who's going to give you a little more information regarding chargebacks.
Thanks, David. So the next section we're going to go over is chargebacks. What are they? How can you prevent them, as well as disputing them? So chargebacks. Nobody wants them, but anyone can get them. What exactly is a chargeback? A chargeback occurs when a customer files a dispute with their card issuing bank about a specific charge on their account. Your payment processor then debits the contested amount from your account and forwards the chargeback to dispute for review. From here, you have a set amount of time to respond to the dispute with compelling evidence that the charge is valid. The response is then reviewed by the issuing bank, which can either uphold, which means the customer wins, or decline, which means you win, the chargeback. There are over 150 types of chargebacks across the 4 major credit card providers. However, not all of them are applicable, and many are incredibly rare for businesses in the e-commerce industry. The most common types of chargebacks among e-commerce businesses are fraudulent, credit not processed, consumer dispute, and technical/processing error. And we'll go over those here in just a moment. The main benefit of responding to the chargebacks is the potential to recoup any lost funds, and this can be especially attractive to businesses because you are charged a fee for each disputed transaction regardless of the outcome. Responding to chargebacks can be beneficial in disputes regarding big ticket items since losing that revenue can impact your bottom line. It's very difficult to win chargebacks that are the result of fraud, but in the event you receive one, there are specific things you must provide to dispute those chargebacks, and that's per the card brands Visa, MasterCard, Discover. But if you follow these simple guidelines below, we can help you attempt to prevent chargebacks so that your chargeback ratio remains low. A little bit of info about chargebacks. 81% of customers file chargebacks with their banks out of convenience rather than speaking with the merchant, that's you, directly. And this is a phenomenon known as friendly fraud. The rate of consumers initiating unjustified chargebacks is growing at a rate at 41% per year in a phenomenon known as cyber shoplifting. A customer who successfully files a chargeback is 9 times more likely to file another. This is another reason that it's important to attempt to dispute chargebacks, because if you just let the chargeback go and don't ever dispute it, the customer who filed that chargeback is more than likely going to issue another chargeback. So into the 4 different types of chargebacks that there are. The first one, fraudulent. The customer believes that someone else used their card to charge the transaction in question. Again, this one is a little bit more difficult to win. Credit not processed, which means the customer returned the products they ordered and never received the agreed upon refund or credit. Consumer dispute, which means the customer never received the products they ordered, or they claimed the products were not as described, they were defective, or they were damaged. And then there's technical/processing error. This means there was an issue during checkout. For example, the customer was charged twice for a single purchase. In that event, you do have the option with Volusion to void the transaction within the first 24 hours. If you void the transaction, the customer's card will be refunded, and you can use that information to then dispute a chargeback if you do receive one. Another part of this is it would be good for you to keep in contact with the customer, letting them know when they can expect those funds in their bank accounts. That way they don't issue a chargeback. So a few different things you can do to prevent chargebacks, and we'll go in depth a little bit more with each one of these in the next few slides. First one, depict products honestly and in great detail. Next one, make sure the return/refund policy is easy to find before the customer orders. Obviously, you want to provide exceptional customer service. You want to vigilantly monitor orders for unusual activity, and we'll talk a little bit about what kind of unusual activity you can look for. You don't want to charge the customer until the items have shipped, and then, of course, send follow-up emails after that for every step of the order. You want to keep track of returns and issue refunds promptly, and you also want to list adjusted price and shipping times clearly for international orders. So depicting products honestly and in great detail, you just want to make sure each product is described as exactly as it will arrive. Upload clear images of the product and write descriptions that include important information like dimensions, compatibilities, incompatibilities, weight, color, and more. The more accurate the presentation of your product online, the less likely customers will feel like what they received was not as described. Make sure the return/refund policy is easy to find before they order. If customers are aware of rules and processes before placing an order, they'll be more comfortable purchasing in the first place. Then, if you wish to return the product for any reason, they'll know they have a clear path forward towards getting reimbursed and will likely try that method before involving the bank. Obviously, you want to provide exceptional customer service. Make sure contact information is easy to find. If a customer can talk to a live person and explain their issue, they may be willing to reach a compromise before they resort to a chargeback. If the customer is asking for an exception to clearly stated refund policies, pay attention to the customer's demeanor, because sometimes it's worth issuing a refund anyway to avoid the headache of a chargeback later. Disputing a chargeback can take anywhere from 1 to 3 months to dispute. Don't charge until the items have shipped, and send follow-up emails for every step of the order. Keeping customers informed of the status of their order is an easy way to instill confidence that their product is on the way and has not been forgotten. Customers are less likely to dispute a transaction for non-receipt of goods if they can see exactly where their order is and aren't charged too soon for it. Obviously, you want to keep track of returns and issue refunds promptly. One major concerns for customers is returning a product to an online store but never receiving their money back, because at that point they lose out on both the product and their money. You can alleviate this fear by keeping customers informed throughout the return process and make these transactions a priority on your end to ensure the customers get their money back as soon as possible. And that's also going to help you have return customers, so that because the customer will know that, it's an honest, good business company. You want to list adjusted prices and shipping times clearly for international orders. We know international orders are a great way to grow a business, but they are a bit riskier. If a customer's local currency is not displayed, they may get confused about the amount they are paying and file a chargeback when the amount on their bill does not match. Clearly list the business's location, local currency, and export/shipping restrictions to avoid those chargebacks. So vigilantly monitoring orders for unusual activity. This is some stuff you can look at here to monitor that unusual activity. So first one, if a shopper is placing large orders without preference of size, color, make, or model, you'll just want to reach out to the customer, make sure that it's a real person on the other line, and make sure that that is the product that they want. And again, this is going to help you prevent fraud and help you prevent future chargebacks. If a customer has, or if you have unusually high transaction amounts, so say you typically process $50 to $100 orders and you have someone place a $10,000 order in your store, that's definitely going to be out of the norm for you. So you do want to do a little bit more investigation for that and ensure that it is a true and correct order. If you have existing shoppers who suddenly order a substantial volume of goods or services, that could be an indicator that they had their card information stolen. You'll want to reach out to that customer, verify that it is in fact them, and that's going to help you mitigate fraud as well. If you have a single customer that provides more than one card to cover an order or a set of orders, that's again one you're going to want to take a little bit closer of a look at. Shoppers that order more than once in a given day, just verify with the customers that yes, it is them. If you have multiple transaction attempts with a failure at the first attempt, that could be an indicator of possible card testing or fraudulent activity. So if the order finally does go through after the multiple failed attempts, you might want to monitor that one a little bit more closely. So some frequently asked questions we have here. The first one, should I reject an order if it has a high fraud score? Fraud score is a useful barometer for how likely an order is to be fraudulent, but it is best reviewed on a case-by-case basis. You may find some medium risk scores on orders that are from legitimate customers. However, scores highlighted in red, or if they're greater than 75%, are more than likely recommended to be rejected. Next question, what should I ask from the customer if I suspect fraud? So how you correspond with your customer if you suspect they're not legitimate will vary. If there's no direct response by email or phone, that may be seen as a red flag. You will want to address any inconsistencies with the order that are cause for concern. So if you are able to get a hold of the customer and there's an inconsistency with shipping and billing address, you can always verify that the customer did place the order, this is where it's going, etc. Next question, I have confirmation of delivery. Why am I still receiving a chargeback? A customer can issue a chargeback for several reasons. The customer could have received a defective product, the shipping time is longer than stated on your website, or the product could have not been received. Again, this is another reason it's important to stay in contact with your customer. And just so if you do have longer than normal shipping times, you can inform them as to the delay. It's also a good idea to have shipping information in case you receive any potential chargebacks. You can submit that documentation for review and to dispute the chargeback. So some reasons why you should have Volusion Payments. As you can tell, we have a dedicated risk team to help you, our merchants, mitigate fraud. We also have a dedicated payments team that can assist you with all of your chargeback inquiries, general account inquiries. We're also able to assist you with any orders in your store. So if you're having a customer whose card keeps declining and they are certain that all the information is correct, we can actually go in, review any decline codes that are popping up so we can give you the information that you need to hopefully successfully process your sale. We offer competitive industry rates, and you, the merchant, also have access to your merchant portal, which is an incredibly useful tool. Inside of the merchant portal, you have access to your merchant statements. You can dispute chargebacks online, which we all know is much faster than disputing chargebacks by mail. You can also view settled transactions, including refunds. So if you do have a merchant or a customer that says that they never received their refund, you can go back into your settled transactions, pull up that exact refund and the date that the refund was processed. And if the customer does dispute a chargeback, you can then use that information to dispute your chargeback. If you have any questions, please fill them out in the form provided, and David or myself will answer those questions for you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks, Josh. And thank you to David as well. Lots of great information today. And thank you to all of you for attending. Please submit any remaining questions you have now, and we'll include a list of those answers in our follow-up email tomorrow. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.